You're listening to Raising Our Voices Summer Special on 3CR. Today we hear from our good friends VATT Chat, who will be joining us next year in the 6 p.m. Wednesday time slot.
Voice at the Table provides practical information to ensure people with a cognitive disability have a real and equal voice on boards, committees and advisory groups. We do this by providing training for people with an acquired brain injury or intellectual disability and through a peer-led monthly meetup. We educate organisations and government departments to use inclusive meeting practices by providing training and resources. But most importantly, VATT tries to make the world a place where everyone is equal and can participate by being given supports they need to contribute the way they want. Our board is disability-led and our resources and training are co-produced and facilitated by people with a disability. Come check us out, voiceatthetable.com.au.
We gather together today on this special place to continue our learning journey together. We acknowledge the Woi Wurrung and Boom Wurrung people of the Kulin Nation as the traditional custodians of this land and waters of the place where we are recording this podcast, and the sovereign had not been ceded. We acknowledge and pay respect to the elders past and present and emerging. We also pay respect to the First Nations who are listening.
We remember the self-advocates who have worked really, really hard over the years for the right for themselves and other people with disabilities to live in the community and for equality and human rights for all.
Nothing about us without us.
VATT Chat. In today's episode of VATT Chat, we continue our chat with Larissa MacFarlane, and our chat about disability pride and art and words and language continues. Let's jump straight back in. So that was a really a great experience for me and a great way to get involved, you know, and then finding out more about the disability pride and everything that entails. Being part of the second mural, I think that was great. I'm not sure, but the last update I got about it was it's still there. The weather's worn it down a bit, but it's still there, which is fantastic.
It is pretty amazing. It is still there. It's coming up for 3 years, which is not how long paste ups ever usually last. And it is actually, a lot of it is quite unreadable. It has faded a lot. But if you're standing looking at it from a distance, it very clearly still says in huge letters, disability pride. And then underneath there's sort of illegible bits of paper. And what is amazing too is that, it currently has a little bit of tagging on it, but it has been amazing. I'm quite astounded at how little tagging it's had over the 3 years. It didn't have any for like a year and a half. I think it was COVID was when it got its first bit of tagging, which then faded. And I think that's, I don't really know why that's the case.
There was a few theories being thrown around, like that several of the members of the local tagging community were there during the paste up and watching what was going on, and were talking with some of the people, and they got a bit of an insight into what was going on.
Is this your theory? I haven't heard this one.
No, I heard it from someone, but I can't remember who. I'm sorry. 3 years ago. That's a lifetime ago.
Yeah, I like to think that, when it was destroyed by council the first time, that pretty much everyone heard about that. And I imagine the tagging gang went, right, well, we can be better than council. We're not.
Yes. Yeah. So,
but yours.
I dare say somewhere in those series that there is the truth. I think there was that exposure to what we were trying to do that second time round, and that community decided, no, we'll respect that. We won't go there. I mean, you could also say that, well, unless you're actually going past it, it's not really a high profile area for taggers.
That wall's been tagged quite a lot in the past.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
It's right near Footscray Station, in case anyone's wondering.
It's 201 Nicholson Street, just a short wheel or a walk from the station. A little bit blocked by roadworks at the moment, I think. Hopefully still wheelchair accessible, although I find that these days roadworks aren't.
No, they haven't been for a long time. But
yeah, true.
They try sometimes, like I've seen them set up little ramps. But I think that's more for them to get their digging machines up and down rather than for people in a wheelchair.
I think so. Yeah.
So that was 2017, and there was this great 2017, 2018, and 2018, and you had the great lettering, which is what you've just said, is still very visible. The disability pride lettering, and
closely,
you contacted me about it being reused, and I said yes, of course. And so I'm going to put you on the spot here and ask what's happening with the Laneway project.
Wow. Okay. I'm in that that as an artist, you'll know that complicated phase in the middle of the project where you sort of regret never taking this on, and it's all going to be terrible, and it's so much work ahead of you, and there's so many variables. And when you're working in the street or in public, there is so much out of your control. And unfortunately, I haven't been able to do a lot of work whilst we've been in lockdown. And I've only just come out. I feel like I've come out of lockdown now, by the way. So things are very behind. Anyway, having said all that, because that's just art speak for, insecurity. Do you know I believe the biggest job about being an artist, the hardest thing about being an artist, or pretty much the only thing you really need to do, is ignore or speak back or have conversations with the voice that tells you not to make work. And if you can appease that voice and do the work, then you're going to do all right. So that's all you have to do. Do the work and just don't let that voice tell you to stop.
Yeah. I haven't reached that stage in my career yet. I'm still just, ooh, go. So.
Oh, well, maybe you'll keep going like that. Just go. Anyway, so I've been really lucky to have been given being invited to be an artist, a commissioned artist with the City of Melbourne are running a project, 40 visual artists in 40 laneways. So it's a big project to revitalise the city. But what is really good about the project is that they have invited not your average, normal, well-known artists. They've gone looking for artists that have been around a while that are not recognised, or, people working on the fringes. And they've got several proud disabled artists, which is very exciting. They might have more that I don't know about, but there's quite a few. Yeah, it's actually really impressive. I'm quite impressed. So I was really happy to be part of something that is, trying to, include all sorts of different artists and art making.
You're listening to VATT Chat.
I think one of the things with making art as a disabled artist is it's really easy to have your artwork dismissed as something other. It's not contemporary art, it's something other. And, it's or outsider art, and they're not valid. So it's, I'm going off a tangent, aren't I?
No. I was hoping you would go this way because I've been trying to work this bit out and give it proper shape to battle with. Yeah, outsider art has a place, and it's completely relevant and deserves to be in that space. It's not what we're doing. We're artists. We just happen to have a disability, and we use that disability to fuel our art as well. Yeah. It doesn't make us outsiders. It's just we're using what we have.
That's right. And I don't want to, I mean, there was a time where I did identify as an outsider artist because I really wanted to identify, I suppose, and every other type of art form was excluded to me. And so I'm not, as thank you for pointing out that we, outsider art in itself, because there is a strict definition around, people who make art that they're not connected with, haven't had any art education, and they're just making art purely for themselves. And that's a really valid form of art. What I have problems with is the way that is dismissed and the way it's seen as not of value, worth showing in a gallery, or it's not of worth in the economy, or all that sort of stuff. So and disability art is the same art that's people make in community settings. It's not valued as it should be. Yeah.
There is that sort of overhanging or stigma, I think is probably the right word, about disability art and day programs. And so many people, when you say disabled artists or disability art, the first reaction is, like in a day program. And
having said that, most of my, that's where I started making art, was in day programs. And they're pretty awful places, super awful places. But
some of them are pretty good though. I know several artists who absolutely thrive in them. And
that's right. And I'm speaking more of the whole system. But for me, it was amazing because I had somewhere to go with peers, with other people with disability, and I could make art. So even though it was deeply problematic, and for quite a few years we only got butcher's paper and crayons, it was a place to go and somewhere to be because I had nothing else. And so these places are great. I mean, there's also that whilst we're on a tangent, I've become more and more aware of another type of disability or institutionalized art is ADEs, Australian Disability Enterprises, which are also known as sheltered workshops. That is a big thing out there where people, so for the audience that doesn't know, there's 20,000 people who work in these things called sheltered workshops or ADEs, and they are usually paid, their wages are very, very low, sometimes only a couple of dollars an hour. I think the maximum you can get is $13, which is still well below the award that non-disabled people get, but people rarely get that anyway because it's usually knocked down a lot. And so for me, they're deeply problematic places. I think this is slave labour happening in Australia today. And it's been to the courts, and it's it's deep. There's deep issues there, but some of these sheltered workshops employ artists, disabled artists, and they pay them this minimal tiny wage of a couple of dollars an hour. They make artworks and then they sell the artworks, but the artists don't get any money from the artworks because they're getting their wage, which is not enough, which is very little.
It all plays into, our bigger overarching area of voice at the table and having a say in the bigger things that are happening. And that is, it is literally examples of the opposite of our saying of nothing about us without us. It's, it's organisations, faceless organisations, doing things so using the word for, but not really for, disabled people, and they very much. I know that sounded very ableist what I just said then, and it was meant to.
Okay.
And,
Yes. No, I got that. Yes.
Yeah.
Hey, can I tell you? Can I go back to the mural, the Laneways mural?
Yep.
I will be annoyed if
we got a little Perfect example of how we go on tangents.
That's right. Yeah. So it's very exciting to be part of this, and very daunting as well. And I wish I was doing it under better circumstances. But we've got to do what we can do. But I think this is a nice safe space here, and I'm I'm going to let you in on the secret of where it's going to be. It's going to be in Punch Lane, which is up the north, the top end of what we call the top end of the city. It's really out the east corner, but up near Parliament anyway, off Lonsdale Street. And and I'm going to be it's sort of, I am hoping, but I'm not 100% sure yet, that it will contain the artwork that we have previously used, which is of disabled people's bodies, including yours, Warren, that spelt out the letters of disability pride. So that may or may not be there, but this mural is being fueled by my commitment to disability pride, and particularly because, as I said earlier, I found it really difficult to be proud and to sort of speak back and challenge my internalized ableism and my shame. I've spent a lot of time with the medical systems getting new diagnoses in the past 18 months. So that medical system I find deeply shaming, and it really throws me because they're so ableist. But anyway, so I felt like I really needed to challenge that. So it was actually returning to that poem, Laura Hershey, and going, I really want to look at proud disabled women who have made me who I am today. People, and also knowing that our history is hidden from us, that it isn't documented, and that the women in particular, disabled women, are hidden. I mean, before we talked about Kurt Fenley and Dylan Alcott, who are awesome people, but they are white and male. And there are all these other amazing people, but they don't get the same airtime on the ABC or on any other mainstream media. So I've been looking at disabled women, some of who I know and some of who I don't know, some of who I discovered along the way. And I'm hoping that I'm making portraits of them all, which is a really interesting thing because it's not something I've done before, like do portraits of faces. In fact, it's a new thing and it's a little interesting.
So when you say doing portraits, are you still working in the printmaking style?
Yeah.
Or?
I'm doing liner cuts of liner cut portraits, and they, as I mean, that's the joy of making art, is as you learn, things change and you learn along the way. And no, it's right, it's not visual, is it? I was going to say I can show you the latest, but it's not going to work, is it? We're on video, we're on audio. Yeah, so some, there's people like Stella Young who is well known to Australians. She really cracked, like Kurt and Dylan have done, she really cracked the sort of mainstream market and got her face everywhere. And that's why I loved her so much, because she was everywhere. And that meant so much to me as, just personally to me, knowing, this woman who I didn't know very well at all, but she had my back. She was there saying, I'm a proud disabled woman. And I was like, yeah, she's speaking for me and I'm going to use her strength. So one of her greatest qualities, I think, was pushing back against that pity medical model. We're doing this for you thinking. And she's saying, no, you're not doing it for me. You're doing it for you. And, I do things for me. Yeah. Actually, it's reminding me of a line in the poem that there's the last paragraph of the poem that really speaks to me. It's, remember, you weren't the one who made you ashamed. And so many people with disability, I think, and I know I carry around this shame of like, shall I identify, because I'm going to experience being looked at differently and then I'll be embarrassed and there's shame there. But we aren't the ones that have made ourselves ashamed. Like, we experience the shame, but the shame comes from society. Society is ashamed and afraid of disability. And so we end up experiencing that.
Yeah, I was thinking along the lines of where I live now, a very multicultural area. And that shaming of disabled people is very prevalent, and it's, you know, the family member doesn't even recognise that they have a brother or sister with a disability.
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah. And it's just a failure. You know, that's why we need to have more conversations, because it's a failure to recognise that disability is part of life. Like, it's part of all of our lives. Whether you're non-disabled at the moment, you know, 90% of people are going to experience disability in their lifetime or care for somebody with a disability. That is a lot of us. And it's not something that happens to somebody else and it's over there. It actually happens to all of us all the time. I mean, you're wearing glasses. Whilst we don't call that a disability anymore. It's, you know, there are ways around
I had that argument with NDIS just the other day during my planning meeting. Because I actually wear glasses because of my brain injury.
Exactly.
My eyes themselves are fine. So there's no like normal sort of aging or anything like that. The eyes are actually really good. It's the processing unit in the back, and the glasses I get are lopsided, so one side stronger than the other, to alter that so I can see straight. Doesn't always work. And I said, but if I don't get the glasses paid for, I can't, you know, it's like saying to someone, oh, yeah, we recognise that your disability is there, but the wheelchair is not going to get funded because, well, you can get that funded elsewhere.
That's
yeah, I had that argument about well, show me where I can get my glasses paid for by someone else, and I'll go to them.
Yeah, I think that's a whole another version of ableism that the NDIS enacts upon us, and that idea that some disability is medical and some is disability and some is medical. Like, I really still don't understand the difference. Which makes it really hard to navigate the NDIS if you just can't understand a basic thing like, oh, this isn't a disability, this is a medical thing. Like, what? Yeah. It's ridiculous. And on a side note, I did have luck with getting glasses, by the way. It's one of the few things I have managed to do on the NDIS. I'm not wearing them, and I should be. I do have faith that you can do.
Well, I got the one planner, like the previous planner last year. Yes, no worries. It's in your file that, you know, you have low vision issues due to your brain injury, and it says it right there in the file. So that makes complete sense. And then 1 year later, they're saying, "Oh no, we don't fund glasses." Once again, it's that ableism, and I think there's also that whole inherent flaw within the NDIS. It's that letter I, insurance.
Yeah,
seeing it as an insurance scheme, and they're only paying insurance out on claims that can be proven. You know, which is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, I can't really do this conversation.
No, I didn't mean to either. It's just,
I mean, only that, but just and this is good to let people know, because I think I'm not the only one, but I have terrible PTSD about the NDIS, and it's built upon trauma and abuse from other insurance agencies before I got to the NDIS, and it mostly makes it impossible for me to use it, and I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one.
Not at all.
Yeah, and I think it is particularly big for well, actually it's probably big for all people. But I was going to say, it is an issue for people with brain injury. I think that, I don't know. Because I mean, things have changed.
We can make lots of guesses and things like that, and we may be spot on with them, but we may also be completely wrong.
You're listening to VATT Chat.
I think that because brain injury is, you know, still often missed, particularly, for example, women, like, you know, they say that more women get brain injuries than women, but I think it's just because women are undiagnosed and they get their brain injuries through ways that are already you know, very othered, like family violence.
Yes.
So it's really invisible, and I think that lots of people spend a long time not knowing, even if you are told you're diagnosed with a brain injury, when you get sent home and you never meet anybody again and you forget, you spend a lot of time going, I'm making it up, or I don't know what's wrong with me, I wish I had a name, or what does this mean? Or when I had a brain injury, none of the symptoms of brain injury were acknowledged. So it was all about, you know, working of your limbs and
yes, I got a lot of the same information as a stroke, as someone who's had strokes. You know, it's all about, you know, rehabilitating your limbs so they work. And I'm going, my limbs are fine. What about my brain? My brain's not working. You know, why are you giving me that information?
Yeah. But a lot of the symptoms around fatigue or dizziness or nausea or executive functioning, all that stuff is very missed and not really acknowledged. It might be like, oh, you have this, but it's never seen as something that you might need support with, or that it's not. So that's where I think that for a lot of people with brain injury, stroke, there might be an increased incidence of sort of potential abuse and potential PTSD in medical systems and health systems, because you're struggling to have these difficult things in your life acknowledged, and if they're continually dismissed, that is abuse, and that can really play out in a form of trauma. And I think that's why I raised it. Yeah,
I think we've talked about enough for today.
Oh goodness, we have. We didn't get to talk about the ABI Wise app.
So Lara had a huge part to play in the birth of the ABI Wise app. It's the first and probably only app out there worldwide for people with a brain injury. It's very, very useful. And it's made by people with a brain injury. And it's not even just for, it's by, which is, you know, that for and by. I love those two words together. And but it is very, very useful. I have it set so it tells me every week a new tip. So I've been I try and follow those, but don't always get them right.
That's why,
and I don't remember them either. That's why I have it set so it tells me.
That's right. Hey, we could speaking of tips, I invite you to actually submit some of your own tips, because I know that you have some brilliant tips that I've got from you. That it'd be great if you wanted to share them with the app, and then other people could learn.
If I could remember them, yeah.
All right. We'll just let that bubble away, and I also
and we'll throw it open a bit wider to anyone else with the brain injury to submit their tips, and we can forward them on to the ABI Wise people at Brain Injury Matters.
Well, actually, if you have a tip, you can actually submit it on the app itself.
Yep.
So there is a button where you can, of course, people are welcome to send them to the Voice of the Table or the podcast, but they can also send them to Brain Injury Matters, or do it on the app itself. Yeah.
Yep. It's probably easiest to do it on the app itself. It's just there. You don't have to think about who to send it to. You just do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think we've covered everything. As usual, it's been an absolute pleasure to sit here and chat with you and hear your wisdom and your passion for art and disability pride, and for the ongoing internal ableism fight that we all undertake. Thank you so much, Larissa. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much, Warren. A great chat, and always so lovely to talk to you.
Nothing about us without us.
VATT Chat.
You are listening to Raising Our Voices on 3CR. Stay tuned at the same time next week for more disability activism and advocacy on Wednesday, home time. Bye for now.
You've been listening to a 3CR podcast produced in the studios of independent community radio station 3CR in Melbourne, Australia. For more information, go to allthews.3cr.org.au.